so we are at lesson 6.2, Slope-Intercept form notes. A copy of these notes are in the agenda if you want to print those off to use. Might make it a little less writing for you. And again, I highly recommend that you take notes as you watch the videos. You can stop the video to write things down, so on and so forth. So this Chapter 6, all about linear equations. And today we're going to talk about one form, which is slope-intercept. It's the most popular one. It's the one that you dealt with all of the time last year in pre-algebra. And we're going to deal with two other forms this year too in this chapter. But today, slope-intercept form. So slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. All right, and m, you saw in our last section, 6.1, m is slope, and you see that a lot, and b is the y-intercept. So b is the y-intercept. So if you, it's where it crosses the y-axis. So if you are looking at an equation that is in slope-intercept form, the slope is always the coefficient of the x term. So in this example, y equals 3x minus 5. Here's the coefficient on the x. It's 3, so my slope would be 3. My y-intercept is what follows. It's usually just a number because it's where it crosses the y-axis. And of course, you always take on the sign of what's exactly before it. So in this equation, after the x-intercept, or just that number, that constant, is -5. So my y-intercept is -5. Don't forget to attach the sign. So if you kind of had the same thing, except we turned it around and they gave you the slope is 3/8 and they gave you the y-intercept of, oh, I thought I still had that. They gave you the y-intercept of 6 and they gave you the slope of 3/8. You could use that to write your equation. So remember, your equation is y equals mx plus b. So it usually always starts with y equals, just like we learned in the last chapter. We start with a function, a y equals or a f of x. It happens to be y this time. And then m is 3/8. You would leave it as a fraction, even if it's improper. X, and then this was a positive 6, so then you would have plus 6. So y equals 3/8 x plus 6 if you were going to write in an equation. All right, next. Sometimes the equations are not in slope-intercept form. So for us to use slope-intercept form, sometimes we have to rearrange them to get them into slope-intercept form. So if you look at that first one, it says y equals, so that's good, but it says 7 minus 3x. Technically, this is not in correct slope-intercept form. You would have to flip-flop those. So this would be y equals negative, make sure you attach that negative sign, 3x plus 7. So that would be correct slope-intercept form there. This one, as you look, the y is not by itself. It has a minus 5x. So what you would do is you would add 5x to get y isolated. And so to rearrange this to put it in slope-intercept form, which of course, you know, we're going for the y equals mx plus b, it would be y equals, and then you'd start with the 5x, and then you'd have the minus 4. And now it's in slope-intercept form. Last but not least, this one is not isolated. The y is not isolated. And actually, you have two buddies. This is kind of like a two-step equation, so to speak. So we're going to subtract 4 first to the other side. And so when we do that, that would give us 2y equals negative 3x minus 4. Now, we have to isolate the y, and this is where you have to be very, very careful because you're going to divide by 2, but you have to divide every term by 2. So that means I have to divide the x as well as just the constant by 2 as well, so be careful when you're doing that. So that would give you y equals, leave it as an improper fraction, 3/2 x, never change it into a decimal. And then you have a negative 4 divided by 2, which would be a negative 2. And simplify if you can, but if it ends up being improper, just leave it improper. All right, so sometimes you have to rearrange, but we're talking about slope-intercept form. Now, slope-intercept form has some advantages. And one of the greatest advantages of slope-intercept form is it's very easy to write an equation from a graph in slope-intercept form, and it's very easy to graph equations in slope-intercept form. So what you are looking for when you have an equation for a graph, you're looking for y equals mx plus b. So you have to determine the slope, and you have to interpret the y-intercept. So let's deal with slope first, and we did this in our last section. So this was slope from a graph. So I need to pick out two friendly points. And this doesn't happen to have any friendly points located. So a friendly point would be where it crosses at a T, a crisscross. So I can see one right here. So there's one. Let's see. Not one, not one, not one. Here's one. Let's see. Not one, not one, not one. Here's one. So I have now at least two. So when you have a graph, you can, of course, do rise over run. I'm going to go back, and my rise was in yellow. I think I did green to make a triangle. Here's my triangle. So my rise was in yellow. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. My run was in orange, so my run is just over 1. So my slope is up 4 over 1. So my rise versus my run. My rise was 4. 4. My run was 1. And 4 over 1 is, excuse me, 4 over 1 is equal to 4. And of course you have to simplify. So let's just count here. 1, 2, 3, 4 over 1. So, and again, you don't have to make the triangle. You can just count, but I get the same thing when I count the next one. So 4 over 1, so my slope is 4. And then I need to find my y-intercept. So where does it cross the y-axis? And it crosses the y-axis right there. So my y-intercept, where it crosses the y-axis, is at 3. So my y-intercept is 3. So when I put that together, I would have y equals, my x is 4, or my slope is 4. So it'd be 4, and then x, and then my y-intercept is 3. So plus 3. And I try to put it in color so you can see where I'm getting those things from. Okay, next one. Again, no friendly points, so I have to find some friendly points. Looks like it goes through here at -3. Not friendly, not friendly. Here's a friendly one. Not friendly, not friendly, not, oh, here's a friendly one. Okay, so if I do slope, my rise over run, now notice the line. It's going to be negative. So when I draw my triangle or I count, I'm going downwards, so I know it's going to be negative. So down 1, 2, 3 over 1. So -3 over 1. And then my y-intercept, it goes through the y-axis at -3. So when I put it together, y equals, simplify, -3 over 1 is -3 x, and then -3. Okay, so my equations. Dun, da, da, da. So now, graphing equations. You locate your y-intercept and you graph it on the y-axis. Then you find your slope and use rise over run to plot the second point from the y-intercept, and then draw a line through the 2 points. And actually, we did this in the last chapter, so this shouldn't be anything new, and you also did it last year. So first and foremost, y-intercept, here it is, -2. So at -2, let's see, that's -1, -2 is kind of hard to see, but let's see, that would be -1. Here's -2. That graph is a little bit off with its numbers, so apologize about that. And then my slope is 3/2. So my slope is 3 over 2. So that means I'm going to rise 3 and I'm going to run 2. So I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3 over 1, up 1, 2, 3 over 1, up 1, 2, 3 over 1, and you can do as many as you need, and then get out your straight edge. And of course I don't have one right with me, so I'm going to freehand it. Never freehand it, always get a straight edge. Don't do as I do. Sorry about that. So here's my straight edge, and there's my line, and it should go all the way through, and it should have end arrow marks. All right, next one. Y equals negative 1/3 x plus 5. So my y-intercept is 5. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Looks a little better with the positives. And then my slope this time is negative 1/3. So that means I'm going to go down 1 and over 3, and I start from that y-intercept. So down 1 over 1, 2, 3. Down 1 over 1, 2, 3. I think over 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. I did. Down 1 over 1, 2, 3. Okay, and again, pick up your straight edge. Do not freehand like I'm doing. Definitely need a straight edge. Sorry about that. And make your line. Okay, so start at the y-intercept, rise over run. And again, you should be familiar with that. We did that. So that's one of the pluses of slope-intercept form. It's easy to find the slope, it's easy to find the y-intercept, and it's easy to graph. Now, in slope-intercept form, a lot of times when we have real-world situations, we write our real-world situation in slope-intercept form. So as you look at real-world problems, a lot of times slope-intercept form is the best way to write it. So it says a music store is offering a coupon promotion on its CDs. The regular price for CDs is $14. With the coupon, customers are given $4 off the total purchase. Write an equation in slope-intercept form representing the total cost of the purchase. So sometimes they give you, variables to use. This one doesn't happen to. It just says write it in slope-intercept form. So y equals mx plus b. So y equals the total purchase. My slope and my y-intercept is kind of what I'm looking for. So it says a music store is offering a coupon promotion. Well, a coupon usually does what? It usually takes money off. So it's a subtraction. The regular price for CDs is $14. With the coupon, the customers are given $4 off. So there's that off too, which would be a subtraction. So write an equation writing total cost. Well, we don't know how many CDs we bought, so that's our x. So that's kind of, this m is our slope. So it'd be 14x, and then you get $4 off your purchase, minus 4. So every time we buy a CD, you times it by 14, but then when you're done, you're going to subtract $4 off. Now, you're going to graph your equation. Now, you could start at negative 4, and you could go up 14 over 1, up 14 over 1, which, okay, you could do, but can you imagine how many numbers you'd have to have on your graph? So actually graphing using rise over run like we did here in your y-intercept doesn't really make a lot of sense. So when you're doing real world problems, you kind of go back to making a table, kind of going back old school. So remember that you can make a table, and of course you could do your 3-column table. I'm just going to do a 2-column table right here, x and y. And remember, with linear, you're going to test 3 numbers, and it has to be representative, the 3 numbers you choose. Usually I always say a positive, a negative, and 0, but this is a situation, and you're buying CDs. You're not going to buy 0 CDs. You're not going to buy negative numbers of CDs. So you're going to test numbers that make sense for the situation. So CDs, maybe I buy 1 CD, 2 CDs, 3 CDs. So I'm going to go ahead and plug those in. So I do 14 times 1 minus 4. So 14 minus 4, my total bill would be $10. 2 CDs. So 2 times 14 is 28. 28 minus 4 is $24 I would pay. 3 CDs. 14 times 3 is, 14 times 3 Isn't that 52? 42. So 42 minus 4, which would give you 38. So based on those numbers, you can make your graph. So X referred to CDs, Y referred to total purchase, your money. So you need to have a title. So buying CDs. The X is right here, so this is the number of CDs. Always need labels, always, always, always. Y is your money. So money here would be your cost or your total purchase or something like that. I'm just going to write cost. And I'm going to put a dollar symbol there. And so number of CDs, I just have 1, 2, 3, so I'm just going to count by ones. 1, 2, 3. And I go anywhere on my Y's from 10 to 38. I think I'm going to count by, fives. So this is a 0 here. So we've got 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, and 40. And that would get all of them in there. So now I'm going to plot my points. 110. Boom. I've got my dot. 224. 224 would be just shy of 25, right about there. And then 338. 338 would be right about there. And it should make a line. So definitely look to make sure it makes a line. But before you pick up your ruler, now that you know about this, you have to ask yourself, is this discrete? Or is this continuous? So that continues in this chapter. And a lot of you didn't do so hot on your quiz from chapter 5 on discrete and continuous. So you need to make sure. So you go off the x-axis and you have to ask yourself, can you have partial things like 1.5? Does 1.5 make sense? Can you have 1.5 CDs? Can you have 2 3/4 CDs? No, you're not going to have a half a CD. You're not going to have 3/4 of a CD. So this is what we refer to as discrete. So you can't have a half. And if you were a half, that would be continuous. So this is discrete. So that means I leave it as dots. Remember, D, D. Okay. If you can have a half, that means it's continuous. And then you connect. So don't forget about that. And you use the x-axis. So take the opportunity to kind of show you that all again. So I'm going to leave it as dots because this is discrete. You can't have a half. So this is a count of things. That's what discrete data is. So it says use your graph to find the total cost of sales for 6 CDs. Now, I will tell you, they word it like that a lot, like use your graph. So you could, 4, 5, 6, and then you kind of, but a lot of times your graph isn't specific and exactly on a point, one of these little intersections. So I don't advise you to use your graph. Use the math that's involved. You have an equation right up here. Y equals 14x minus 4. And use this to plug it in. So even though it says use your graph, I wouldn't. You could kind of get an idea from your graph to check your work, but I would actually plug it in. And what they want you to do is take and plug in 6 for x. So y equals 14 times 6, and then minus 4. And of course, you can use your calculator. 14 minus 6 is 84, and 84 minus 4 is $80. So how much would 6 CDs cost? 6 CDs would cost $80. Okay, so don't use your graph. Use your math. Get an exact answer. All right, last but not least, there's just a couple of more I want to just kind of refer to and talk about because sometimes students, kind of get stumped up with that. What if you have y equals 3x? Well, this is in slope-intercept form, but you don't have a y-intercept. Well, you do. Your y-intercept is 0. So when you go to graph this, I'll just use this as my x-axis. That's perfect. My y-intercept is 0. So I start 0, start here, and then I can do my slope. Up 3, 1, 2, 3 over 1. Up 1, 2, 3 over 1. And then I connect. And again, don't use freehand, use a ruler. Okay, so there's that one. Notice you also have this, and we've talked about this a couple of times, but I want to talk about it again. Y equals 2. Whenever I see that, I think to myself, it crosses the y-axis at 2. It crosses the y-axis at 2. Well, here is my y-axis. We'll make this my x-axis. Here's my x-axis. The only way to cross the y-axis is to go through it at 2. So 1, 2, here's 2. The only way to go through it would mean my line has to be like this. Maybe I'll pick up and do a purple or something. My line has to be this. Maybe I should have done purple here too or something so you can see it different between the axes. Okay, so this is my line. And then of course, is there an x value here? Because remember, these are all y equals mx plus b. Is there an x value? And you know if you're slutting on this, if I put myself slutting, what's my slope? So my slope here is 0, because it's 0 fun. And then y-intercept, where to go through the y-axis, my y-intercept is 2. Okay. Last but not least, let's talk about x equals -4. And I believe these are all on your homework tonight. And if they're not on tonight, they are tomorrow. So remember, when I see this, I think to myself, it crosses the x-axis at -4. So the only way to cross the x-axis at -4, 1, 2, 3, 4 is right here. The only way to do that is to cross it, you got to go through it. So that means your line's going to be like this. So x equals -4. So here, if it asks you your slope, which it probably will, that's how the homework is laid out. What is your slope? Excuse me. If you're sledding, remember on this hill, your slope is undefined. Now, do not just leave it blank. Same thing with here. Do not, if you have slope, do not leave it blank, because I would assume that you don't know what your slope is. So don't leave it blank. You would actually write the word undefined. What is my y-intercept this time? Does it cross my y-axis? Nope. So your y-axis, you would say there's none. There's no y-axis because it doesn't cross the y-axis. So keep those in mind. Those are kind of special rules, special exceptions to the rule, I guess. So there you go. Y equals mx plus b, known as slope-intercept form.